Welcome to episode 377, the playoff edition of the Rundown, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app, use the promo code NATION, N-A-T-I-O-N, to get in on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Of course, NHL, NBA playoffs ongoing. The NHL kicked off on Saturday with 2 games. We had 3 games yesterday, and we'll have two more series get going tonight, Montreal and Washington, Edmonton and LA, and then the Florida series finally gets into the NHL playoffs starting tomorrow night. We welcome in Frank Saravalli, who is in Dallas to cover the Stars and the Avs. And I guess let's start there, Frank. Colorado, pretty solid victory, and Dallas without Robertson and without Heiskanen, that's a pretty tough hill to climb.
Yeah, it is. Like, there's no doubt about that. But I think when you look back on game 1, you saw a Dallas team that was really well prepared. The score at the end was lopsided and not really indicative of the game. It was a 2-1 game late in the third. And, you know, frankly, you're smelling overtime. You're going, hey, this is a game that we could see some prolongation. And I think for Dallas, it's tough to find their confidence right now. That's 8 consecutive losses heading back to the regular season. And that part, I think, looms larger than the injuries. Yeah, like I've said before, and everyone understands, Miro Heiskanen, a material change to your chances. And Colorado is a team that's so hard to defend in general. But it's the Dallas Stars trying to find an era of good feelings right now. That is what stands out to me. They're searching.
Oh God. Yeah. Like you know what? Like, it's funny. They need some of their big guys to step up, Frank. Like, Rantanen's got to do more than what he did in that opening game. And you know what? He started to come around. He finished with 18 points in 20 games. He should be a point-a-game player, should be more than that for them. And that's just, we can say that about anything. Sometimes we can dabble into deep in a series, but sometimes the simple thing is your best player's got to show up. Not every night. Some nights you need a guy here or there, but when you've lost 7 in a row, you needed your leaders to be your leaders.
Yeah, and Rantanen was invisible in game 1. It was a game that reminded me of Four Nations Faceoff for him. It was a game that reminded me of some of his time with the Carolina Hurricanes. And look, I know that this has been a really difficult season for him for a lot of reasons. And to see a player of his magnitude traded twice is, I mean, it's almost kind of unprecedented in the same season. That said, he's here. He signed a long-term extension. For better or for worse, this is home now. And he needs to get back to being the player that we all thought he was. And I would say if he doesn't show some of that again in short order, here's what it's going to do, Jay. It's going to bring a ton of questions of, is this a guy that only became a standout player, a superstar in the NHL on the back of Nathan McKinnon?
Yeah, that's just the truth. Yeah, he's going to have to show up. There's no question. So no lineup changes. The update, Robertson's he's week to week, so he's out for sure. What are your thoughts on Heiskanen? Will he make an appearance in the series?
I mean, I love there's so many lame Easter jokes to make with him, you know, on the ice for morning skate on Saturday. He's risen. I would say that I believe Miro Heiskanen is an option late in this series. Could he push it and be back before then? Maybe, but it's going to take some dire circumstances for this team.
Quickly, let's look at a few of the other series. Game 1, the Winnipeg Jets. You're at home. You give up 2 goals in the first period because last year they got lit up. That was really what lost them the series. And you're thinking, and then they kind of clamp it down. They only gave up 17 shots in that game. St. Louis did score 3 times. It was close, and then they kind of took over very quietly. A player we don't talk about a lot, Frank, who's really good in the playoffs is Mark Scheifele. Like, when he gets in the postseason, Scheifele shows up and produces.
He does, and I think just a massive sigh of relief for the Winnipeg Jets and their fan base. I mean, again, not really all that different than Toronto of the West. Had the Leafs lost game one, had the Jets lost game one, the storyline for 48 hours is unbearable if you're one of those teams. Here we go again. And to have a game in which Hellebuck gave up 3 goals on 10 shots and the entire team looked like they were on edge. There were nerves for sure. And they acknowledged that after the game. I thought the way that they settled in, and particularly the way that they played that third period, that was textbook Winnipeg Jets hockey that we saw all season long. It was brutally fast, precision plays, great passing and playmaking ability, and it started from their own zone and stretched all the way up the ice. I thought St. Louis did a really good job not giving up a ton throughout most of the game. And the third period, the Jets put the pedal down and were able to pull away. And they've earned themselves now an ability to take a deep breath.
Well, the Blues had 2 shots in the third period. They only had 6 in the second. And if you're St. Louis, you're gonna go back and say, how can we generate more offense? And the concern really for the where the Jets are without Ehlers, they're without Velarde, 2 guys who, when those guys get in, man, they're going to make a big difference to that team long term. And I look at St. Louis, and the Dylan Holloway injury, Frank, I thought was very noticeable. He's been one of their best players. He adds a lot of speed to them. But in the second and third period, you talked about how fast Winnipeg played. Like St. Louis just kind of didn't look like they were in the same time zone as the Jets.
Well, so everyone said, why is this year going to be different for the Jets? And my answer is because they're not playing the Avs in round 1. That's a huge difference. The Avs last year, they torched them with their speed. The St. Louis Blues are not a fast team. And that gives the Winnipeg Jets a huge leg up in trying to compete.
Yeah. Let's put in the middle the Carolina Hurricane. They're the only team that like thoroughly dominated start to finish in their game. 45 shots. It really wasn't close. New Jersey's banged up before the series starts, and then as the game's going on, you see Brennan Dillon go out. He doesn't return. It didn't look good. Like he went to stand up and couldn't even stand up. And then Luke Hughes leaves on the same play. Cody Glass gets hit by his own goaltender, and you're just thinking, man,
what was that?
This series might be over in 3.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not celebrating too early, but I did call for a sweep. That was the only sweep I had in round 1. I just think there's a huge mismatch between these two teams. And then you add in the injuries to your point. But can we talk about Markstrom for a second and what the heck? I mean, I know that he was aiming for the opposition, but two-handing your own guy coming across the crease is not a great look.
No, it wasn't.
That's some Jordan Binnington stuff right there.
Yeah, and the thing was, Markstrom played great in that game for them. Like that could have been the score could have been much more lopsided than what the scoreboard said.
More impressive game 1, Markstrom, Binnington, Markstrom or Blackwood. 2 New Jersey Devils connections.
Yeah, I'd probably go Blackwood. I thought Blackwood, Dallas probably should have been up in that game. You mentioned, overtime pending. They could have been up 3-2. I thought earlier. I thought Blackwood was great.
I would agree. I wonder, maybe that's just how the goalie game works out sometimes. Guy doesn't, whether it's through injury or whether it's through immaturity, Blackwood just didn't work in New Jersey after a great start to his career, and he's still a young guy. I wonder if New Jersey's kicking themselves at all, watching him have the success that he is now in Colorado.
Yeah, well, he had the whole injury thing too, right? And so, I think a lot of teams sometimes, Frank, we can go a list of defensemen where I think management and people, they get impatient and they want, well, man, this guy should be good. And then you throw in the factor, if you're not the management team who drafted a player, you don't seem to have the same connection to him. I've never really understood that. I'm like, who cares if you drafted him out? If he helps your team and you think he's going to be good and you think he's going to be good long-term, then you keep him. But we've seen that, like that's happened historically for lots of players and lots of places where, second, third home, and all of a sudden, they're the player that the first home was hoping they'd be.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe that's just how that position in particular works.
Oh God. Yeah. Like it is a 25 or 26 is where lots of goalies, like there's a few, Price, Fleury, a few other guys, Vasilevsky, but there's lots of other guys that it takes, till their mid-20s until they're comfortable as an NHL goalie. Happens all the time.
I just thought it was a really important game for Mackenzie Blackwood for a lot of reasons. First career playoff start, that's huge. Had not really played well down the stretch. And I think there was probably some part of the Avs that, having given this guy this long-term deal, is thinking to themselves, hey, like, we got to get this right. This guy's got to be good for us. And so I mentioned sigh of relief for the Winnipeg Jets. I bet there's some part of the Colorado Avalanche front office that was like, all right, good, we can settle in now with this guy.
Yeah. I do. I got some fun numbers we want to get to in a second. The other game yesterday, of course,
I think I'll be the arbiter of fun here.
Okay. Vegas and Minnesota. Vegas wins 4-2. Anybody who had the line, Brett Howden scores with like a second left in that game into an empty net, his second of the game. Thomas Hertl has himself a really good game. And Minnesota, really, Frank, at the end of the day, when you look at that game, it comes down to special teams. Vegas went 2 for 2 on the power play, scored both, and Minnesota didn't score on the power play. And that's really kind of the difference in that game.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota hung in there. There was no easy ice, which I think Vegas acknowledged before the series started. And I think that's kind of the amazing part about the Vegas win. I mean, you get 2 points from Dorofeyev, but the big guns for Vegas were really relatively quiet. So you're able to win a game in which they don't put up big points. You're in a pretty good spot, right? I mean, I know you mentioned Hertl, but that's a pretty positive sign on a night where it was a little bit disjointed and not a ton going at even strength, that you're able to still come out with the game 1 win.
Yeah, the Eichel line and Stone line, they were fairly quiet, right? I think they're -1 if I'm not mistaken. So you would Minnesota, if they look at their game plan and say, hey, we hold them, the Eichel line, to nothing, we actually score on them. But power play, like special teams, make such a huge difference in a series at times. And, Vegas, the other thing Minnesota is going to have to do is they're going to have to generate more shots. I don't think you can win with 20. Although when you look at the games yesterday, Frank, I mentioned Carolina. They're the only team, I think the only team that had more than 30 shots. Like there was not a ton of shot. Oh no, sorry. Ottawa had 33, but
did you see where Ottawa shots? Did you see the shot chart of where Ottawa shots came from?
Oh yeah. They were all, they're not, those
they were not really even close. It was like you could draw a 3-point arc in the offensive zone, and they barely were inside of them. So
yeah, that's
another example of how misleading some of those numbers can be. Because I heard, whether you watch the first intermission report or whatever it might be, and they're like, well, the shots are 13-4. Look, the Sens are dominating. And I'm like, I what?
Yeah. No, they're doing the old, hey, let's just put everything on net, which is a great theory. But if you have nobody in front of the net, I've never understood that theory at all. Throw pucks at the net, unless you're shooting the pad from a hard angle, so the goalie's got to kick out a rebound. But if you're just shooting a shot and A, he eats it up, or B, he kicks it in the corner, it's really kind of irrelevant. It doesn't do much other than, make it look like you think you're having more possession time, but you're really not. They didn't have many high danger chances.
No. And let's dive into the Leafs, because they were cooking with gas in game 1.
Hey, Frank, I said it last week, and I've been saying it for Toronto will go as far as their big 4. And guess what? Their big 4 all had 2 points. I'm not expecting them to have 2 points every game, but I crunched the numbers beforehand. And you look at like Marner and Matthews in the regular season, 1.16 for Matthews, 1.13 for Marner. That's since they've been in the league. Then you go to the playoffs and it's 0.88 and 0.87. You compare that to McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Mark Scheifele, offensive guys. No one drops like that. It's basically the same. Like McDavid's 1.58 to 1.55. Draisaitl actually goes up from 1.32 in the regular season to 1.46. McKinnon's 1.3 points per game in both. Kucherov, 1.23 in the playoffs. And you go down like a half a point less for guys like Marner and Matthews. There's your answer, Toronto fans. I've been saying this, and yesterday their power play goes 3 for 6. They're heavily involved in the power play. Their penalty kill is great. They don't give up a chance or a goal. But when your big guns are your best players, your odds of winning increase significantly.
It was almost like they dispelled every notion. I know one game, but they hammered that notion that their big guns won't show up. They started fast and didn't appear to have any nerves. The building actually appeared to be loud for the first time in a while, and they were not afraid to mix it up when it came time to get physical. Whether it's Ridley Gregg or Brady Tkachuk was very quiet in game one. Didn't really give you a whole lot. But when you're thinking about that team, they were kind of everything that they haven't been through their playoff runs. That's the least nervous and most confident that I've seen the Leafs look in the Matthews and Marner era in a playoff game.
Yeah, and they'll need to be. Like, it's huge. Like, this is a series they should win. They're the better team. They've been the better team. And you mentioned Brady Tkachuk, Frank. Like, I wonder, how much of that was first playoff nerves? How much of that is a guy who's banged up?
I doubt it's nerves because, I mean, on a bigger stage than a Stanley Cup playoff game, US, Canada, 4 nations face off, there were no nerves and they were ready to go quite literally from Jump Street. Now, if it's something, my guess would be him being banged up. Yeah,
because you're right. If he's their emotional engine, and if he's not rolling, it's going to be really hard for Ottawa, especially when Toronto's big dogs are rolling. So that really comes down to Ottawa is going to have to generate more quality chances. They're going to have to get inside. I think Toronto just said, hey, you guys want the perimeter? We'll give you perimeter shots all day long. Ottawa is going to have to get inside the slot a lot more, get a little bit more. Definitely, if you're going to shoot from the outside, you better have traffic in front. Otherwise, it's just a wasted shot.
Well, and guys like Tanev and Ekman-Larsson, this is what they're here for. This is why those guys were brought in to help this team better prepare to be a playoff team. And look, I don't know what the difference was. I don't know if it's the coach. I don't know if the players are just more free. That's that kind of, and look, I have no idea the way the rest of the series is going to play out. Maybe there will be some tense moments. Maybe there won't. Maybe the Leafs will just put the skate to them and move right on to the second round. But that team looked totally different than at any point so far in the playoffs. They look like they're ready for it. And that's a pretty eye-opening thing for the rest of the Eastern Conference, if that's the case.
Very true. We'll get to the other series in a bit, but let's talk about some other NHL news. We had 2 teams getting rid of their coaches, Anaheim and the Rangers. Probably not a huge shock in either market, but the Rangers and Laviolette, like some of his comments down the stretch, it seemed pretty obvious to me that, I don't really talk to those guys. Like they weren't in sync. And I don't think to put it lightly, but you look at the Rangers, and I know New York historically, they're big market. We always have to have an experienced coach, and I'm kind of like, really? Does it matter that much? I don't know if I buy into it. They're going to need a coach. Like, I'm very curious. Do they just go the recycled route again, or are they going to look at maybe a young and up and coming coach? What do you think?
I don't have a real good sense yet of what Chris Drury's thinking, and I think honestly, anyone that tells you that they do is they're making it up today. Here's what I'll say, just to put a bow on the Peter Laviolette part. I've covered him for 15 plus years now, and intimately on a day-to-day basis for years. Addressing the players post-game has never been his thing. So he's been very consistent with that. And I think more than anything, you mentioned the idea of the Rangers. Will they go with someone different than the veteran Norm, the experienced guy? And I think for me with Laviolette and maybe some of these other guys that we continue to see pop up time after time, obviously very good coaches, like very clear. Look at Peter Laviolette's track record in year 1 and year 2 with his team. It is as good as it gets. And there's a reason why he keeps getting hired for these positions, because when you take 3 separate teams to a Stanley Cup final, you've obviously got the goods. But I think part of what the issue is that the message never changes. It's the same message time after time. And part of it is rooted in not just faith, but experience of, hey, I know this works. I'm telling you this works because I can prove to you that it works. The problem is it goes from Rangers to Predators to Capitals to wherever he goes. It's the same one every time. And at least that's how it's been explained to me. And I think that part, what layers are you adding to it? How are you continuing to evolve? And that, I think, is the true question of all of these veteran experienced coaches, is how can you find a way to not change it up a bit, because what you're doing does work, but there needs to be continued growth. It can't just be, I'm going to put on a new windbreaker today with a new team's logo and wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, 100%. Like you've got to evolve and change with the times. And yeah, if some player comes and he's, if you've coached that long, eventually you've probably coached some of the players on the team in some other spot, right? And if they're like, well, man, this is the exact same message I had before, and that's great, but eventually it'll wear thin. Anaheim's in a total different position than the Rangers, right? The Rangers have a veteran team that have high expectations. Anaheim is like, hey, our young guys, we're kind of charting upwards is how they feel, right? And I know, Frank, at the start of the year, you'd said that, there's some disconnected time with the players and the coaches, and then it kind of died down, and the Ducks actually were fairly competitive for the last, 60 games overall. What direction, like when you're Pat Verbeek and you look at that team, and I think sometimes a player is a good fit for a team, better than other teams, and sometimes a coach is going to be a better fit. Do you think they go now with, hey, we want a coach who's won somewhere to help our team learn how to win? Or do we want to have a coach who comes along, who's, has obviously had some experience, but he's going to grow with our team and we're all experiences together?
I think they need someone that's going to grow with the team, that is a proven developer of players. That's what I think they need, because we heard Pat Verbeek's comments and they were very clear that this is going to be an aggressive summer and that his expectation is for the Anaheim Ducks to be a playoff team next year. They're a long way off from that happening. And, there's
David Carl, would Anaheim be able to get him?
I doubt it. Like, I don't know if they're going to try. I just don't know. Will Pat Verbeek, will he go down that path? Not that he won't consider the idea. I just don't know that Pat Verbeek is willing to, like, you're going to have to kind of put aside any, I don't know if ego is the right word, but you're going to have to defy some norms here to be able to pay David Carl what it's going to take to get him to leave Denver. And that's going to take some serious buy-in from yourself. It's going to take some buy-in from your ownership, like massive buy-in, quite literally. I just don't know that Pat Verbeek is wired that way. And frankly, I don't know if Pat Verbeek is the right fit for David Carl. That's one thing that he mentioned. If you go back and listen to the Frankly Speaking that I did with him a couple months back, he wants to do this in partnership. And what that means is that he's continually on the same page and in lockstep with his general manager. And I don't know that Pat Verbeek communicates well enough in order for that to be a possibility. I really don't. Okay. And I think back to this season and the way that it played out. It's really not often, Jay, that you see a coach get fired after a 21-point improvement in the standings.
Yeah.
I really wonder whether this was even Pat Verbeek's decision at all, or if this was suggested to him that this was a change that needed to be made based on the way the players felt and the culture that had surrounded this team on the inner sanctum.
Yeah. Well, we heard rumblings like that before. So,
yeah. And I mentioned it earlier in the season. Like, I don't think some of the things that came out of Greg Cronin's mouth went over very well with the players. I'll say that.
Now, Chicago, they have an interim coach, and he's going to get interviewed. But Davidson said they're going to do, big sweeping search for a coach. And
they're
Chicago,
really not.
Pardon?
They're really not. Their search is one guy. It's David Carl, and that's the guy that they've underlined. That's who they want. That's who they're going after. And then if they don't get him, then the search is going to be pretty wide ranging.
So if you look at Chicago, and I'm very curious if the organization truly is ready to understand where they are. Like if Carl talks about a partnership and knowing Chicago is not one or two pieces away. They've got one or two pieces, and now they got to add lots to get where they want to go. And I'm saying at least 3 years, probably 4 before they're a playoff team. Again, sorry, Hawks fans, but that's just a harsh reality of it.
I think you're out to lunch. I really do. I've said this before. Look, I was in Dallas last night. So, you've heard me, right? Like I've been saying Sam Renzel, we talked about Nazar and how he was the more dynamic player between him and Bedard down the stretch. We've talked about Alex Vlasic. They brought in Spencer Knight. They've got 1 million bottom six forwards in their organization. And I was at dinner last night, and Mark Lazarus was there from The Athletic, who covers the Blackhawks on a daily basis. And he said, dude, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, dude, I saw Renzel play these last 6 games, and he is the real deal. I'm telling you, the team is not as far away as you think they are. And if they get one difference maker this summer, they're going to be very close to a playoff team next year. Not saying they're going to be a playoff team next year. I'm saying they're going to be very close.
Yeah, well, I said they're not a playoff team.
You said 3.
This isn't horseshoes. You don't get bonus points for being, we finished 10th.
Okay, but you just said 3 to 4 years away. I'm telling you that they're not.
Okay, well, we'll see. Lots of teams have thought, for 5 years, Detroit and Buffalo said they were going to improve. It's hard. It's a lot harder, I think, because to get to the playoff team, you got to knock some teams out, right?
Well, and to do it in the West, I think, is infinitely more difficult than the East.
Well, 100%.
Tell me who you're taking out, right?
Like look at Vancouver didn't make the playoffs this year. They're a 109-point team. They got some pretty decent players, and they're not in. So Calgary got 96 points and didn't make the playoffs. I'm telling you.
Let me ask you this. Let's phrase this a different way. If you had the opportunity today to take over a team, Vancouver or Chicago, and you have to build and make them into a playoff team again, which team are you picking? Now,
do I have the ownership, or am I the owner?
You are the almighty ruler. You make and decide everything. But I'm asking you pick a roster that you'd rather start with.
It's a good question. Because I think a lot of dysfunction in Vancouver stems from ownership. So if I get rid of that, and I've still got Quinn Hughes and I've got some other pieces, I would sign Rick Tocchet, by the way, if I was the guy making the decision in Vancouver. I'm not giving an out and saying, it's the coach, because the coach isn't the problem. I still might lean to Vancouver because I got sure things in Vancouver. I got hope in Chicago.
All right. Sam Renzel, better than Brock Faber. Alex Vlasic. You've got 3. Then you add in Levshinov. You've got 3 really good defensemen. Yeah. I don't know. Quinn Hughes is special. Not really sure what Pettersson is. And I'm not really sure, with Besser likely leaving, what else they have after that up front in terms of firepower outside of DeBrusk. And, what's the health status of Thatcher Demko? I'm just saying, pick a random team.
No, it's a fair question.
They're in a better spot than I think a lot of people realize.
Yeah, I just still think Chicago, hey, it's great to have upside. It just takes longer than people think. Chicago was talking last year, we're going to get all these guys. We're going to take a big step. They didn't take any steps. There was really no step in progress, nor should there be. Chicago finished where they should have been. They need to have more players to surround Bedard with, just like San Jose. Right, San Jose is, you know what? I know Mike Greer, and I agree with Mike Greer. Needs a veteran goalie to go with Askarov next year to help him, because at best he probably should be, split duties work his way in as a goalie. We talked about it earlier, the age of most goalies and when they really feel comfortable in the NHL. And San Jose needs a lot of pieces too. Now, they got some prospects coming, great, but not every prospect is going to work out. I've seen it time and everybody gets so excited about prospects, and some of them will be NHL players, but they're not all going to be top 6. They're not all going to be top 4 just because they project that way. They just won't be.
So which team is going to be better next year that shouldn't be in light of Gavin McKenna being available?
Oh, that's because, hey, man, that you don't necessarily want to do what Buffalo did in the McDavid and tell everybody and then be like physically disappointed that you didn't get him. Like, that's probably not the best way to go about it. But like, to me, San Jose, I don't want to improve my team that much. I'm sorry. I don't. Like Celebrini and Will Smith, we can be competitive. Great. But I'm not going out there suddenly and revamping my blue line so I can finish and pick 6th. What the hell am I doing that for? Like San Jose and Chicago. But I'll say Nashville, Frank, because if you consider Nashville was 30th this year, I think they will be a team.
They're almost guaranteed to be better next year.
Yes. Yeah. So
by pure accident. Like,
yeah,
those guys are going to just play better. They just will. And
Saros
will be better. And the Bruins will obviously be way better next year. I'm with you. I have an interesting tidbit to pass along since we mentioned McKenna. Sources indicated that in CBA talks over the last couple weeks between the NHL and NHLPA, one item that was on the table was a 19-year-old draft. So moving it back a year.
I've been talking about it forever, baby.
Oh, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm told now that it's not happening.
I know. They don't get it.
Or I should clarify that to say not likely to happen. Now, the NHL and NHLPA had met for a couple weeks, starting talks. They did not meet last week, and they are scheduled to resume talks later this week. But my understanding is that it's no longer a viable thing to have a 19-year-old draft. Now, that would have been fascinating. And I think there were some legal questions and ramifications. Can you limit someone's ability that is an adult to work?
It's an easy out, Frank. And I've
got to go back to the declare system. We talked about this a couple pods ago. You must declare yourself for the draft.
All you have to do, Frank, is because somebody can try to argue with you and say, well, you're limiting them. Here's the facts. Proven true actual 18-year-olds, not guys who are drafted a year later, which is technically there's their 19-year-old year because they're born after September 15th, right? Not those players, guys like Taylor Hall. And, when they came in his draft year, he turned 19, right? Before December 31st. It's his 19-year-old year. Actual proven 18-year-old players, you average 2 a year over the last in the salary cap era, 2. And it's actually, I think, down to like 1.7 now. So you could easily say, you know what? We'll open the draft. You can have 5 spots. In the first 5 picks, you can take an 18-year-old because that's where they're getting picked. And that's who's going to play. That's just history here. So let's do that. The rest are going to be 19 and we move on. Like if you look at the draft now, it's close to, I think, 50% who are already draft plus 1 year, some draft plus 2 year, right? So it's already going that way. And to me, you look, the NFL, the NBA, they all changed. How come they don't have these big lawsuits against them? Like, I think the NHL, if that's their reasoning, I think they're scared of it, or they don't have a proper plan to look and say, well, first of all, we could put this simple little caveat in to stop that because we have all the history and all the data to show you that there aren't 5 18-year-old kids every year. There isn't. Mm-hmm. And so that's one. Or B, well, the other leagues are doing it. How do they get away with it?
Well, the reason I brought all this up with McKenna was, could you imagine the absolute nut punch it would be for him?
Well, no, he'd be 19 though, right? Because he's a late birthday.
Oh, he would be 9. I didn't look at the birth date, but I was thinking to myself, what would happen if all of a sudden they change the rule for the 2026 draft and he has to go do what? Where's he going to play? You're obviously going to go play pro somewhere.
Yeah, you go to Europe or whatever. But yeah, because he's a late birthday, right? So he would be he'll turn 18 like technically later this year. And so then next year it would be his 19-year-old year. He wouldn't be 19 at the time of the draft, but they're just going to move the draft date back to the calendar, right? That's all they have to do, and it solves the problem.
Yeah. Well, obviously lots of smoke in the last few weeks and months. I mean, I mentioned it back in November, but a lot of people still think that McKenna is heading to Michigan.
Yeah. Well, and they're not sure. I don't know what he would do there. Like, is it better for him and his when you know you're going right to the NHL? Is it better off to be playing 68 games or playing 36? That's going to be his question.
I think better competition against older players, and frankly, the ability to practice more is hugely beneficial.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk for fill in the blank.
What is up, boys? Ready to go with an all-new edition of Fill in the Blank, which is brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. An official partner of the NHL. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. All right, let's get to a couple here. Well, let's start over on Bet365, where this one takes a little bit of foresight, but they do have odds up already for the Conn Smythe Trophy. So I want you guys to maybe just throw out a guess. Maybe not so much a prediction, but blank is the odds-on favorite to win the Conn Smythe Trophy, Frank.
My guess is that the odds are still on Connor McDavid.
Okay. Greg, who do you think the top spot is?
Nathan McKinnon.
Point awarded Jason Gregor. McKinnon is the top dog at plus 1,000, so 10-1. Connor McDavid is tied for third with Cale Makar. The guy in the middle is Connor Hellebuck at 12-1. So I do think a little bit of an edge given to the two guys who have a 1-0 lead in their series. But I guess
so who's the top Eastern guy?
The top Eastern guy, this is actually a little surprising. It would be Sebastian Aho at 18-1, followed by Alexander Barkov and Nikita Kucherov at 25-1.
Holy cow. Kucherov at 25-1? Ooh, that is spicy.
Yeah, I mean, what would be interesting, like the Tampa Bay Lightning to win the cup outright.
Spicy if you think the Bolts are winning round one or not winning round one. I don't know. It depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, I guess so. No one's biting on Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner 28-1. You don't have the Leafs fever after their game one win. No, okay.
What about what's the highest capital? Like, is Ovi the highest capital?
Yes, Ovi's the highest capital at 30-1. What would be interesting is Logan Thompson at 50-1. If you really think the Caps are going to go on a run.
Yeah, is he going to play?
Maybe given what we just talked about in the first 20 minutes of the show. Maybe someone buying on Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner super low in the East is a pretty good value play today.
I think there's some logic there, even just from the perspective of like Bet365 can offer you cash outs. Like you buy on Matthews at 28-1, and let's say it's 2-2 in their series, whoever they play in round two, because you just think they're going to breeze past Ottawa. Like your cash out at that point is actually probably pretty legit.
But that's not even what I'm thinking about with the cash out. My thought is like you buy on Matthews and they make it to the conference final, and all of a sudden it's like 8-1, and your cash you've tripled, quadrupled your money, whatever it might be, and you can cash out and just live with it.
Yeah, totally. Let's go to this
cash
one here.
Outs for quitters, though, isn't it?
It depends. I've had a couple of times where I've like cashed out a baseball bet and then a team blows like a 4-run lead in the 8th, and I'm like, damn, good thing I took my money.
I just think it's a different feel for a singular winner of an event. Like, yes. So an example would be during the Masters when it looked like Rory started to, slide a little bit. I threw some bucks down on Justin Rose, and I threw some bucks down on Aberg. And then as like the leaderboard was changing, even coming down the stretch, like the last 3 holes, like once Rory had that eagle putt, before he even hit the putt, I cashed out on Rose. I was like, oh, he's going to make the putt. So I, just like messing around with it on Sunday, I think I put $100 down on Rose, and then he was like 16-1 at the time I did it. But when I cashed out, he was all the way up to like $700. So I went from 100 to 700, and then cashed out because I was like, look, the odds that this guy makes up the number of shots required to get there. Obviously, I wasn't feeling great about it in the playoff, but to have the guaranteed money in your pocket is kind of awesome with the cash out. That's all.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just kidding. Makes sense.
All right. Next one I got for you. Your series prediction that you're already the most worried about is blank, Greg's. I, for one, took the Minnesota Wild. Last night, I'm watching the game. I'm like, this is exact. I thought the script was going perfectly. I'm like, Minnesota's sleepwalking a bit, but it's a tie game. They still might get them. They obviously didn't, so I'm now worried about that one. But Greg's, which one of your predictions are you already worried about?
Well, of the 5 games, I think all the teams that won I had, so none of them. But you know what? I'm going to go with the Florida-Tampa series because I picked Tampa, and then they're giving Florida like a full week off. So, but then when we made our picks on Thursday, they hadn't even announced yet the schedule. So I'm like, now they're starting on Tuesday. God. It's more days rest. That's the only one I could think of. I'm not too worried about anything else. It's no game.
If you're scared, get a dog. Come on.
Well, what do you want me to say? I'm not going to say none. I guess that could be an answer, but like the first 5, I got all the winners. I'm not worried about I don't think Montreal's going to win. So
Frank,
that's the only one left.
Not worried about any of yours?
I'm just cycling through them to make sure I'm not missing any. Yeah, I'm not feeling very good about the Sens. I picked the Sens to win in 6. That was you got to find one upset. I think any knob that takes all the chalk in round 1 just hasn't been watching hockey long enough. So I feel like you have to pick at least one upset by like the nature of the beast. And I thought that was the best chance, but I did not expect the Leafs to look as confident as they did. And that was a huge change. So I'm not really feeling great about that.
The only upset technically last year in the first round would have been Colorado.
Yeah. But that would almost tell you, gambler's fallacy, we're due for a big upset now. If we win a hole, it's like you walk up to the roulette table, 8 straight reds, you're betting black. So I think we're due for a crazy upset. The series you're most confident going 7 games is blank, Frank.
Florida, Tampa.
Still Florida, Tampa. So none of the first 5 here changed your opinion on them at all or made you think it's going to be tighter?
No, some of them I think are going to be shorter than we even envisioned. Yeah, I could see the Avs making pretty quick work of the Dallas Stars, especially if they win both games on the road to open. That's going to be a short series.
Yeah. I think the series with the best chance to go 7 haven't started. Edmonton, LA, Vegas, Colorado, Florida, and Tampa. So
what about Washington, Montreal? Like, I think that could go deep too.
Nah, I don't think that's a good matchup for Montreal, but so I'll stick with Florida, Tampa because I picked them in 7 to start. So I'll stick with that.
All right. Last one I got for you guys. You touched on this one briefly with the David Carl talk, but Anaheim, I totally understand where you're coming from with that not making sense. But the spot where David Carl would make sense if he was going to make the jump is blank, Frank.
It's still Chicago. He has an understanding of the players from having coached against them in college. I think they've got an open-minded front office. I think they've got an ownership with deep pockets. I think they've got a lot of things going for them that make sense. I think the pressure is way too high on the front offices in New York and Boston to have that even remotely make sense for him. Like, his predecessor in Denver was Jim Montgomery. He watched Jim Montgomery get tossed on his ass earlier this year by the Boston Bruins after a 718 points percentage. On what planet would it make any sense for him?
Oh, you muted yourself. We lost Frank. How did this happen? Must have just gotten unplugged from his computer. Still says muted on StreamYard.
Did you mute him?
No.
Can you hear me now? So that was a special talent. I accidentally knocked the cord out of the mic as I was talking. I got excited Italian hands. On what planet would it make sense for him to go to a team like that? Like, look at how they get rid of coaches in New York. Look at how mercurial Jim Dolan is as an owner. Like, I can't, as much as those jobs might be enticing, I I reiterated, I don't see David Carl and Pat Verbeek meshing at all. So that's just my opinion.
Greg's, where do you think Carl could land?
Oh, well, Chicago's, Captain Obvious choice, I think there. Or I think he either goes Chicago or he stays in college. I don't think any of the, unless there's someone else that acts as a coach here, which is very possible, right? We've seen coaches get axed before, a week, 2 weeks after the season into May, they think about it. So, but right now I think it's Chicago or college.
Let me throw a couple more at you that I think are realistic possibilities. Seattle, if they move on from Dan Bilesma after 1 year. And there's still all sorts of rumblings out there that Ron Francis will be moved up to president of hockey ops and Jason Botterill will take over as GM. 2 would be what happens in Vancouver with Rick Tocchet. Is that suddenly an opening?
You talked about toxic. You want to go, you're not going to New York. Are you really going to Van?
And they don't even appear willing at this point to make Rick Tocchet one of the highest paid coaches. How do you then get there with a guy who's never done it before? It's hard to see, but I'm just giving everyone an idea of what the coaching landscape could look like. And then the third one is, what about the Pittsburgh Penguins? I think that roster is an absolute disaster. I mean, we've talked about it a million times.
Yeah.
But does Kyle Dubas, is he able to talk David Carl into what that possibility might look like? And look, first off, I'm putting the cart before the horse. Obviously, they would need to make a decision on Mike Sullivan. He is maybe the highest paid or second highest paid coach in the league and has term on his deal. I think at least 3 years left. They're going to have to pay that out. So he ain't quitting. I don't think he's walking in there saying, you know what, this just isn't a fit. I'm going to the Rangers. They're going to have to fire him. But I do think Sullivan would then be a great fit. He has 2 choices. You could go to the Rangers or you could go to Boston, where you're from. But what happens with that Penguins opening, that is a team that I think would try and get in the mix for David Carl.
Interesting. Also, you started that with Seattle. As you guys were doing the Gavin McKenna talk, that is the one team I was like, man, just bottom out this year. Trade everybody in the summer and try to get that first overall pick, because that's what they need, is a legit superstar to build around and throw in there. But anyways, that is a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner and every suspenseful moment in between is amazing. Download the app today. Use the code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365.
All right. I want to hit on 3 things with you. Okay?
Yeah.
Is it possible that the Buffalo Sabres are going to do nothing?
Dude, it's funny that because I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, geez, they haven't made an announcement yet. And they had, now I'm like, oh, maybe they're just going to give it more time here and wait until, I don't know what. Maybe there's a game 7 and it's between game 6 and 7 of some series, and they just try to slide it in. But yeah, I think it's possible, Frank. I really do.
I mean, Kevin Adams last week was talking openly as if he's the guy. I mean, I guess you do so until you're not, but he publicly declared that Lindy Ruff is coming back.
Yep.
If he's making that declaration, that would lead you to believe that he is also coming back, which just absolutely makes your head explode. 5 years of the same management group preaching patience to have the results get worse.
Yeah, but Frank, they had a good finish. And that, honestly, that's the only thing I can think of what they're convincing themselves about. I don't get it. Now, I've heard some rumblings that the owner likes people that are really much yes men for him and guys. So maybe he feels that's what he has, and so that's what he's happy with. Hey, these guys do what I want, and that's what we're going to do.
Well,
I guess he's happy with losing.
How'd that work out with the owner making the decision to hire Lindy Ruff?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get it. So then the next one is, I'll ask you the same question about the New York Islanders. Are the New York Islanders really not going to do something? Are they really bringing back Lou Lamoriello for yet another turn?
I'm going to guess if they do, Frank, it's because they're going to feel like, yeah, but look what we got. We got Cal Ritchie. What a great trade. So that's worth it. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm trying to put what convinces them to think, hey, this is the right path. We should continue down this path where, okay, we got rid of Brock Nelson, but it seems like the majority of the rest of the band is coming back, and the rest of the band isn't good enough. Hasn't been good enough for many years.
Isn't even close to being good enough. But at varying points of this season, tried to convince themselves that they were still good enough. And is Patrick Waugh also coming back? Like, he seemed to publicly go after his general manager and his decision-making process multiple times with a microphone.
Yeah. Well, dysfunction reigns in some markets, Frank, and sometimes I don't even know that. I don't know if they need to take a step back and be like, geez, what's going on here? But, you've got some big personalities, and like Lou Lamoriello's had an unbelievable career. There's no debating that. But the plan right now has not worked unless the plan is to just be mediocre, which I can't think is the plan, but it's the only thing that makes sense.
Just tell me what the plan is, and I'll nod along. And I don't know what the plan is. That's my biggest issue. And that, when I looked at that team, and I wrote the story last week of 10 burning questions facing the 16 non-playoff teams on dailyfaceoff.com, my first question was, does the New York Islanders ownership have a pulse? Honestly, show us some sign of your stewardship here and tell us what you're doing. And at the very least, give us a succession plan. Say, hey, Lou Lamoriello's here, but at some point we're going to transition to this next guy. They've done it in other markets. Doug Armstrong brought in Paul Stastny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you could do it. Yeah, you could do it, but wasn't it Steen?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Alex Steen.
Oh, yeah.
I got my Blues confused. The STs.
Yeah, but you're right. Teams can do it, and you can have a plan.
Why can't he be mentoring the next guy?
Well, he should be. That would be a great guy to mentor from. He has seen and experienced everything, but it doesn't mean that right now is the direction's going, because, and hey, I understand loyalty. I get it. And that can be a very good trait, but can also be a negative one if you're too loyal, to the point of loyalty is thinking, hey, you know what? We're going to bring these guys back. And, Kyle Palmieri, we really like all these guys. Yeah. You like them enough to finish 10th. That's what it is. Close. And they got a great goalie. Think about Ilya Sorokin. People don't even talk about him as, they don't get mentioned very much in the best discussions of best goalies, but he's kind of a non-entity on a bad team.
I'm with you. And they continue to remain in the NHL's no man's land. I don't know how they get out of it.
Yeah.
And so my last thing that I wanted to hit on with you was, you mentioned that you don't think Montreal is a good matchup for Washington. Explain why.
So I believe in the playoffs, and we all see it. The games change. It's a smaller game. Everybody's more physical. There's less time. There's less space. And if I look at the size of the Capitals players overall and their experience or inexperience compared to Washington, I just don't think it's a good fit. And I don't love Montreal's blue line. I think Washington's forward group of Wilson and Dubois and Strome and Protas, who's back skating now. He might not be ready for the first few games, but they're just so big and heavy. Yeah, I know he probably won't play in the first series, I don't think. But even without him, I just think Washington. I think they have now. The one caveat is if they're goaltending, if Thompson isn't ready, then maybe the door opens up a little bit there. But because I like Montembeault better than Charlie Lindgren, but I like the defense core in Washington so much better. And I just think that Montreal's and I love Hudson. Obviously, everybody saw what he did. He's great, but I'll take the size and experience of the Capitals over Montreal. It's a great opportunity for Montreal to get into the playoffs. I think it's fantastic step for them. Not many people thought they were going to be a playoff team. I know they said they did, and that's great. Everybody believes they have to do it, but they got in because like the Rangers absolutely, burned themselves from the inside, basically, right? And good for Montreal. Detroit, another floundering stretch drive for them. But I think Washington, like I have that series going 5. I just don't see it as a good matchup at all.
Ooh, if I could wager.
Why do you like the matchup?
Well, I think the goaltending is such a big part of it. Like, tell me who's the game 1 starter and tell me what their health status is for the Washington Capitals. Because their goaltending was putrid down the stretch. Charlie Lindgren, since March 1st, 12 games, .890 save percentage. Logan Thompson was out the last 2 weeks of the season, obviously back skating the last few days, and they didn't name their game 1 starter yet. But Logan Thompson, since March 1st, 10 games, .876 save percentage. Logan Thompson was worse than Charlie Lindgren down the stretch. Worse.
Yeah, I wonder if he was banged up and so. And now Washington is a team. What is it? Was it 12 or 13 in a row?
Here's why it didn't register. Because Lindgren went 7-4 and Thompson went 6-3-1. They won in spite of shitty goaltending, and that is not going to continue in the playoffs.
But do you think the Habs are defensively strong enough to shut down the offense of the Capitals?
Do you really think that the Caps are going to continue to score at the same pace that they did in the regular season? That's my question. I just think it gets nerves. There's a whole bunch of things. You take that team and you throw them into Montreal. It's super loud. They don't. They've got some vets, but they don't have a ton of other playoff experience. Like, I don't know. I'm just saying I think it's closer than a lot of people realize.
All right. Well, hey, I'm always in for. I know that Montreal's talking about 2010. I get it, and that's when Halak was unbelievable in that series. Like the games 5, 6, and 7 might have been the 3 greatest, like a stretch of 3 consecutive games by a goal. It'd be up there in the top 5 for sure of any 3-game stretch in a playoff series. What do you have, like a 960 some? He was on like the one game he had like 50 shots. He was unreal, and maybe Montembeault will be that way, but they needed an out of this world performance to win, and I think that's what they'll need again. Now, before we go, Frank, I got some numbers for you. Can you tell me how many NHL players do you think have played who have made an NHL playoff appearance? Any guesses?
For like all time?
All time.
What's the total number of players that have played in a playoff game?
Yes.
I'm going to say 2,500.
4,782.
Okay.
Jeff Skinner has played the 264th most games all time, regular season, 1,078. He will play his first NHL playoff game tonight as player 4,000. And now there's a few that are starting earlier in the Montreal game. So it'll actually even be, because Montreal has a lot of rookies playing their first playoff game tonight, and even a few in the Caps. So he'll end up being around closer to like 4,800 for a guy who's 264th all time in games played, 1,078. Obviously, it's the most games ever before a playoff appearance. What do you think Jeff Skinner does in his first playoffs?
The same thing that he did for most of the season with the Oilers.
Is that nothing?
Yeah, mostly nothing.
Okay. Skinner's played pretty well here down the stretch. He had a really slow start, but it is a fast, like, to 15 years in the league, man. 15,000
I'm way more
games.
I'm way more interested in the guys that have played a couple hundred playoff games and have still not won it. How many playoff games has Ryan Suter won? How many playoff games has Ryan Suter played in?
Let me look it up. So all time, you look at games played. Like, what about Corey Perry? Is going to move up the list tonight because he's at he'll pass Larry Murphy for 12th tonight at 216. So guys,
up already.
Yeah, he won. I'm looking. The first guy down the list who didn't win would be Joe Pavelski, 201. He's the only one who played 200 and didn't win. Patrick Marleau, 195, didn't win. Joe Thornton, 187, didn't win. Dale Hunter, 186. I don't think Hunt's won. Who else?
I mean, that's like 2+ full regular seasons.
Yeah.
Hockey, 2.5 regular seasons of hockey and not. But then you like, so Suter in general, you mentioned Skinner has played 1,000 in some games. Suter has played 1,526 regular season games.
Yeah.
And he's played 134 playoff games. So he's at 1,700 NHL games and has not won.
That's hard, man. Winning's difficult. And it gets harder now that the league keeps expanding, right? Like your odds of winning just go down. And you'll have another one. Like look at Corey Perry. Look at how many games he's played. And he won a cup in 2007. And then he's lost 5 finals or 4. I think it's 4 or 5. Montreal, Dallas, Tampa, Edmonton. Jeez. So
it's 5 Stanley Cup finals. Anaheim, Dallas, Montreal, Tampa, Edmonton. 5 finals with 5 different teams.
Yeah, that's crazy. So it is but the Skinner one just kind of nuts to be around. So Rasmus Ristolainen now takes hold of that as he's about 770-ish, give or take, games played without a playoff appearance. And if he stays in Philly, Frank, then he will jump over 800 for sure, because he'll be over 800 before, even if they make it, because you got to finish the regular season. But
by the way, Perry had a great year.
Yeah, 19 goals.
19
39.
Goals. Yeah, 30 points. Like, give that guy another deal.
I think he had 5 fights too. So yeah, he had gamesmanship, and that gets that LA Edmonton series is fascinating. Ekholm's out of the series. Kane probably game 3 at the latest, maybe game 2. Trent Frederick, we could see him tonight. Frank, we'll see. If it's not game 1, it's probably game 2. So Edmonton could use it, but their defense core, Josh Brown, will be playing tonight because Troy Stetcher is out for at least another week. So we'll see how they do on the. It's interesting, Edmonton, but healthy McDavid and Draisaitl, can LA slow them down? That's the key at the end of it. And can their penalty kill stop them? The Oilers' power play in 3 series, Frank, 45% in 18 games. Can the Kings' penalty kill wake up in this series? Yes or no?
I think it can. I think this is going to be a long, drawn-out series. And don't make any proclamations based on game 1 or game 2.
Oh, God, no. It's it would, like, the 2 series that LA and technically the 2 series that are starting the latest, I think might be the most competitive. LA, Edmonton, Florida, Tampa. Well, that's another rundown. Thanks for listening or watching. On behalf of Frank Saravalli, Tyler Remchuk, I'm Jason Greger. Enjoy the playoffs. We'll talk to you Thursday.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.